Pathogens are anything that can cause disease. Our most common human pathogens are viruses and bacteria. We will start by talking about viruses and two very rare pathogens called viroids and prions. Viruses, viroids, and prions are not considered living organisms. Viruses are made of nucleic acids and a protein coat. We will talk more about viruses in a little bit. Viroids are nucleic acid only, and prions are proteins only. Viroids are these tiny nucleic acid particles that infect mostly plants. Prions are small protein molecules that actually affect normal protein functioning. A couple examples of prions are mad cow disease, which is also BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Now we will focus on viruses. As I said, viruses are made of nucleic acids, either DNA or RNA, and viruses have a protein coat. They come in many different shapes and sizes, but they always have nucleic acids and a protein coat. One type of virus that we will talk about is called a bacteriophage, and this is specifically a virus that infects bacteria. We know of lots of viruses, such as influenza and viruses that might cause the common cold or stomach bugs. There are no good viruses. Viruses are always disease-causing. There are two types of viral life cycles. The first one we'll talk about is the lytic cycle. Remember, the word lytic comes from lysis, which means to burst or break. So when there is a lytic virus that infects a cell, it actually gets into the cell, destroys all the machinery, the enzymes, the DNA of the host cell, and then it takes over that cell. And the whole purpose of that cell now is to make new viral particles. And when there are enough viral particles made, there are so many in that cell, it causes the cell to burst, and of course that cell dies. A very different viral life cycle is called the lysogenic cycle. The lysogenic cycle is different because when the virus injects its DNA into the host cell, instead of immediately killing that cell and taking it over, the viral nucleic acid will incorporate into the host cell genome, and it will stay there forever. Every time that cell replicates, it is now also replicating the viral DNA. Then eventually something triggers that virus to now go through the lytic cycle. So once that lysogenic virus, it's already incorporated, it switches and goes to the lytic stage of the viral life cycle. A good example of this would be the herpes virus, which kind of hides in nerve cells and just comes out periodically and might cause a cold sore in a person. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is also a virus that has this lysogenic part of this cycle. Viruses are very scary and very hard for us to treat. Typically, when we have a viral infection like a cold or the flu, the influenza virus, we have to just let it run its course. We feel miserable, we have fevers, we're achy. We can treat symptoms, but we cannot really take medicines to make the virus go away. There are some medications like Tamiflu that might decrease the duration of influenza. But again, there are very few medications that help viruses go away. The reason this is because viruses are made of proteins and nucleic acids. And that's also what our cells are made of. So if there was a drug that destroyed proteins or nucleic acids, it would also be destroying our own proteins and nucleic acids. I mentioned earlier that HIV is an example of a lysogenic virus. It can incorporate its DNA into the host cell, and it can sit there for a very long time. A person who has been exposed to HIV is considered HIV positive. HIV infects white blood cells. There's a particular type of white blood cell called T cells that HIV infects. These T cells are very important to help a person fight off infection. What happens is this lysogenic virus, the DNA has been sitting in the host cell DNA and replicating over and over again. But suddenly, and nobody knows exactly sure why it does this and at what point it does, but when it switches to the lytic stage, that's when it starts destroying these T cells. So when a person actually has AIDS, that means their T cell count has started to decrease. HIV is a type of virus that we call a retrovirus. Retroviruses are special because they actually have viral RNA as their genetic material. What happens is they not only have the viral RNA, but they have a protein inside the virus as well called reverse transcriptase. If you guys remember what transcription is it goes from DNA to RNA. Well, just like the name implies, reverse transcriptase is the exact opposite of transcription. It is copying a DNA strand from RNA, which is totally backward of the process of transcription. Then the virus uses enzymes from the cell and makes a double-stranded DNA molecule and then incorporates that DNA into the host cell genome. This is why HIV is a lysogenic virus. As I said before, what happens is then once the virus converts to the lytic stage, that's when it actually starts to kill the cell and the person has AIDS. HIV is a pretty nasty virus because this reverse transcriptase is very, very sloppy when it's making that DNA. So what happens is it mutates rapidly. It's very difficult to treat a person that has AIDS, and there is no vaccine for HIV up to this point already. You guys are all very familiar with vaccines. We've all gotten our shots, and though that is not a pleasant experience, they are very, very, very important to get. Even getting the flu shot every year is extremely important. Vaccines are weakened parts of the virus or a bacteria, or sometimes they're made by recombinant technology and there's really no part of the virus or bacteria. But what they do is they elicit an immune response so that we make antibodies against whatever that virus or bacteria is. So if we are ever exposed to that virus or bacteria, our body already has antibodies that will prevent us from ever being infected by that by that pathogen.